stuff. But it's time to get underway with what could be the battle for Asia Pacific, the second semifinal. Please welcome to the stage the first player, tom60229.
Second World Championship for Tom. At the first, he exited 0-2, but at this one, he is looking for the Grand Finals.
And his opponent, 15 HCT match wins in a row, it's Surrender.
I think after Surrender's performance this weekend, he is the best in the world.
Semifinal 2, tom60229 versus Surrender.
톰 선수랑은 저랑은
Since Tom was in a different group from me, I haven't been able to watch him play, but I know he has a very similar lineup to Stanudachi.
Surrender is a very consistent player. He has performed very well.
Because we are in the same region, we have met a number of times in competitive play.
I am looking forward to facing him because I really like his lineup. He's from the Asia Pacific region, and he is a very good player.
His play is top-notch, but I'm hoping that because my decks are more favorable to his, I should have a better chance to win.
It should be a good show for everyone.
tom60229 versus Surrender. Let's see what you got.
And it's time, semifinal number 2. Who's gonna join Frozen in the grand finals of the 2017 World Championship? We'll take a step back and look at their lineups, and only difference really being the Aggro Druid versus the Jade Druid. And another interesting thing is Surrender bans the Highlander Priest away from Tom and leaves up that Cube Warlock. Why is that admirable?
Well, a lot of times when you're playing these aggressive lineups, Warlock is a class you're looking to dodge. It traditionally is stuffed full of ways to simply remove the board and then defend yourself. With Tom's Cube Warlock, he has copies of Doomguard in the deck, and what that means is a card, Possessed Lackey, won't guaranteed pull a Void Lord when it dies. Sometimes it will pull a Doomguard. That little bit of advantage that Surrender can get from that outcome means that sometimes he will have the aggression to simply push through. If this was a traditional control Warlock, he would be banning it, I believe. But since it's that Cube Warlock, he gets that little bit of extra edge. But already, right away, this is the one I want to talk about, the major difference in the lineup. Tom is bringing Jade Druid, and Surrender has brought Aggro Druid to the table. Jade Druid, in my opinion, has been the deck of the tournament that's so important to people's lineups. It needs to get a win. And against aggressive decks, it definitely can struggle in that spot. However, Tom has brought the Oaken Summons Ironwood Gold.
Yeah, which is slightly better against the aggro versions. But Jade Druid's still floating underneath a 50% win rate throughout the event, so it still is going to be a tough matchup. And like you said, it's going to be crucial that Tom finds a win. And for his sake, he wants to find a win early, because that makes the rest of this match easier for him. But starting off, Patch is drawn for Surrender, not what he wants to see. But he does have some good stuff to scale up the early curve. Coin plus Elven Minstrel allows Surrender to sort of get that resource advantage that you sort of need once this game starts to go on. But a lot of times against Jade Druid, you'd rather have early pressure.
Yeah.
And that's something that I don't think he's going to have enough of at the beginning of this game, especially with Tom's draw, which seems to be quite strong.
It definitely is. The early ramp, I think, is quite important to this matchup. To be unlocking card draw prior to having to defend yourself is a very important deal. And Surrender, lacking that little bit of early pressure, sometimes you could be possibly seeing a coin South Sea Captain in the spot and then Surrender starting to push the damage. Instead, because he's got both Elven Minstrels in hand and he's got the Cobalt Scalebane, he's going to simply look to fortify his position and start to wear Tom out of cards. Surrender's goal will mainly in this game, due to his hand context, be about being strong against Spreading Plague.
Yeah, and you just saw on your screen Surrender's path to get to this point in the tournament. He defeated Omega Zero, one of the best players from China. He defeated Stanudachi, one of the best players from Europe. He defeated Frozen, one of the best players from the Americas. The only region left is Asia Pacific, so this is sort of his final test. And the cool thing about it is both of these players have been touted as the best in Asia Pacific for a very long time. So it's really fitting that these guys meet in the semifinals.
This really is, I think, like the final test for Surrender, so to speak, where he has been beating all the other regions, and that has been something that's consistent to him throughout this year's HCT. He's just had such brilliant performances, and every single time you see him play, it feels like he's getting better and better. And Tom certainly has his work cut out for him because that's what he's been doing his entire career.
That's right. He's already has that World Championship experience under his belt all the way back from 2014. And he said in a lot of his interviews that he felt like he disappointed himself and everybody from his region when he had a pretty rough performance. But now he's back having a good performance here. And Tom's going to go with double card draw.
Yeah, his
branching paths.
His hand was quite lacking in substance after the Spreading Plague. And so he's got his eye on that Nourish for a couple mana crystals. He wants to pull far ahead, get substantial defense down, and then look to unlock the time to use Ultimate Infestation and the cards afterwards. The key to that is and the cards afterwards. That's where Surrender's going to look to try and punish Tom before that. Coin Cobalt Scalebane looking like it could do that, but that is a big draw for Tom right now.
A lot of times the sacrifice you make by playing Nourish for crystals like this is you get behind on tempo. And that's why Arcane Tyrant has sort of made its way into these lists, because these cards that get you behind on tempo, Nourish, you know, even Ultimate Infestation at times. Well, it's
Oh, look at this. I'm very curious about that. That pressure seems like it could benefit Tom a lot. Maybe he's looking to see coin in a play from Surrender and then opt for it later on, like behind the Spreading Plague. If he plays it right now, the minions do just kind of run in. Sometimes Backstab just gets to kill it with the Swashbuckler. And so his goal is to Spreading Plague, load the Tyrant behind it, and then use it to trade off something big.
Yeah, I think that's definitely his plan. He realizes that it could just die to coin Vilespine Slayer, Spreading Plague, and then throwing the Arcane Tyrant behind it.
That is a brilliant play from Tom, and he gets to wipe out this captain. And you can see it on Surrender's face, like, yep, that's what I was hoping would not happen. Wow, that is a brilliant display of timing from Tom, where it's not just the most pressure you could put on the board, but the timing of that pressure that is paramount.
Deviations from the norm. That's what we've been seeing so far in these these couple semifinals. Definitely high levels of play, and Tom almost to that Ultimate Infestation turn already as we come into like turn 5. So he's got a reasonable turn 9 lined up, which is something that you definitely want when Ultimate Infestation is on your mind, is coming soon. And now Surrender, the coin is gone. He's got Backstab to couple with Elven Minstrel, but it is a loss of tempo when you go with Elven Minstrel. You're getting more resources, but you're giving up a potentially a stronger board position.
Yeah, Surrender right now, he's just looking for a way to solidify something that is difficult for Tom to handle. You know, seeing the Wrath and seeing Spreading Plague is a bit of information for him. He knows that Tom's going to come correct with something powerful on this coming turn. And so because of that, he just plays another 5/5 and says, all right, then deal with this.
Jadeite will pick up from Tom, just going to allow him to get these Jades up. But there's still a lot to be thought about in this play. Eye of Blackpaw, while I guess those Shades ramps, it's one of the most powerful cards. Also one of the highest win rates in the mulligan, which is weird for a 6-drop.
Such a strong card.
Yeah. He thought about for a second, maybe Iron Will Golem challenges the board differently, but it doesn't. Eye is definitely better in that case. Tom's going to realize that.
Yeah, Tom even going to just trade off his Scarab here. Says the job's done. I have board position. I have Ultimate Infestation. I think I can win from here. Great use of his life total, and to recognize that he no longer needs that defense because that's suited just in his aggressive position on the board.
Well, if there's any card you want to combo for Elven Minstrel, it's probably Prince Keleseth, since you buff the cards that you're going to draw. But a little late in the game, we actually ran the numbers earlier on this week, and the win rate of Prince Keleseth plummets when it's not played on curve. By, you know, over 10% when you talk about it in that regard. So while it's good, the benefit of it comes from you playing those bigger minions early on in the game.
Yeah. Shout out to our friends over at HS Replay.
That's right. And now Tom has solidified a fantastic lead in this game, and Surrender's going to need to come with something creative to get him out of this one, because I just don't see a way.
It's going to have to be insane. Tom is coming correct with up to 3 more Jades next turn. He's got Malfurion in hand if he needs extra life total. Once he dumps his whole hand, he's already got the second Ultimate Infestation.
Yeah. Even that, he can be free also to utilize, you know, if you draw a second Jade Idol, he can probably just play it, because most of the time you don't go to a scenario where you need to shuffle Jades in this matchup.
Oh,
it's not a fatigue scenario.
This is a counter pressure matchup for sure. saw Surrender talking to himself. He's trying to find a way out of this. Well, we saw this a little bit yesterday when Sintolaw had stolen Jaina away from Frozen in the combo Dragon Priest versus Big Mage matchup. And for the second time, we see a Death Knight hero enter the opposing player's hand.
The question is that enough to sort of swing the tide in his favor? Because he may have control of the board for now, but the longer this game goes on, I feel the more Tom will have opportunities to just get these Jades out of control and control the overall state of the game.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think this is still an uphill battle for Surrender, but cards that Tom can't really account for can definitely change that circumstance.
I wonder.
And he's got to be precise here. Malfurion is very valuable when you get it online early, because then you start to benefit from it. But Tom realizes that he just sort of needs to play a smart game where you can test the board. And Malfurion may be too much of a loss of tempo for him to be able to do that.
Yeah, for now that is appearing to be the case.
My first instinct is Bone Mare, just because
Because you have a Bone Mare.
Because
and
it's
7 or
Bone
more
Mare.
mana. You know, we said the longer this game goes on, the better it is for Tom. But Surrender, I mean, he has that Keleseth buff cranking now, so stuff like Corridor Creeper is certainly an awkward size for Tom to deal with when you get to a certain point.
Yeah.
It's not running over a 1/5 and then getting swiped away. It's not getting hit by Ultimate Station directly.
Too soon.
and Surrender wisely, cutting down the size of his board. He'd rather have multiple big minions than a bunch of small or damaged minions.
Yeah, at this stage, it's so likely for Tom to you know, like have swipe and extra ways to deal damage that Surrender would just rather get the most use out of those cards possible, which is helping protect his big cards.
Ultimate Infestation, not really too much of an option here, considering he would have to, you know, discard a card.
This is looking like one of the opportunities where Tom can try and set up as strong as possible and look for landing that Malfurion. As soon as he's able to land that on a fairly clean board, he really gets out of the game much cleaner after that. So setting up this, another Jade here, clearing off the board with the aggressive use of swipe, this tries to set it up for that Malfurion. And Surrender is going to try as hard as possible to disrupt that at every stage and binds a second Vile Spine to help.
Sort of where the name Tempo Rogue comes from. Always playing for tempo from a board where he looks pretty far behind.
Still so much defense left for Tom. Because he's got the Arcane Tyrant, he knows the 10 in hand, he can still play a card as well. So another big swing.
But now, double Oaken Summon still left in the deck for Tom, and he's drawn all of his 4-drops. That card later on in the game is going to be just gain 6 armor. That may not matter.
I mean, we might be in a Shuffle Jade Idol game as well. I mean,
It
he's not...
rarely happens, but when you draw this many cards and the board is back and forth this much,
then it happens.
sometimes it's a necessity.
Yeah, and this turn here for Surrender, this allows him to get the Malfurion online, I believe. I mean, that was his first instinct, and I would want him to go that direction.
So
And I want to keep an eye on
many
Tom's
options.
reaction here when he sees Malfurion, because if he's been hand tracking, he knows that the card that Surrender just moused over is the random card that came from Swashbuckler. And he hasn't played it thus far. So Tom might be fearing that this is a high impact card, but is Malfurion enough to chop through? Because right now Surrender,
I wonder.
his hand is decent, but Leroy has very limited use. Firefly, while it is buffed by Kells, that's a 2/3, is more of a combo activator later on in the game.
Choose
So his
soon.
hand really just doesn't have much big stuff left. It doesn't have as much substance.
I'm looking at clearing off the 3/3, and I'm curious if Surrender's making poisons here, or if he wants to try and protect Corridor Creeper and pressure it all. I imagine he's likely still in the business of trying to fight for board, and this is how he's going to fight for board, is with aggression.
Yeah, Poison Spiders has sort of been the go-to choice for a lot of players here. It's a really awkward card to deal with one swipe gone.
And you mentioned it, That card is just plainly 6 armor right now.
Gain 6 armor, buff your Jasper Spellstone. That's effectively what that card reads at the moment.
Oh, you have Malfurion, do you?
Well, so do I.
And that's going to buff up the Spellstone too. So that clears off the Corridor Creeper. Surrender loses that value. Hero Power clears off one of the Poisonous Spiders. Tom's weakest minion kills another Poisonous Spider. And it looks like he's going to be left with nothing on the board.
And Surrender needs something big as a draw. But one thing about Surrender's list is that he doesn't have quite as much top end as some of the players we've seen in the field. He doesn't have Lich King. Edwin Van Cleef, though, that's quite large, but he needs to deal with these Poison Spiders, so we would have to hide it behind a Serenite Chain Gang, backstab one of them.
I mean, that's exactly where he's going. This is the... Oh, he doesn't. He has the Malfurion Hero Power.
Malfurion Hero Power, that's right. Not often a variable that we're used to having to worry about in Tempo Rogue. But this is a daunting task. Surrender's looking at Tom's health total and then looking back at his hand and probably thinking, how in the world do I deal 27 points of damage plus however much armor gain he still has left, which is Oaken Summons, Malfurion Hero Power.
Is eternal.
He knows he's still got the 2 Ironwood Golems somewhere in that deck as well.
Yeah. And that dread is setting in for Surrender as you see him just sort of take a step back and think, what's my best shot at winning this game? And that's building as big of a Van Cleef as possible and hoping it lives.
And more defense for Tom.
So Tom has to be thinking double Elven Minstrel gone. Not much stuff in Surrender's hand.
Double Vile Spine gone.
Yeah, is the board likely to get bigger than this? But Banjo, you get the best of both worlds. Nourish effectively costs 3 mana because you get the mana crystals back. If you draw some more Jade Idols, you just keep shuffling them and building bigger stuff.
Well, there's 1. Make that 2.
7-7, 8-8, 9-9.
Yeah, that's 28 power Tom just added to the board.
And now without the dagger up, hero power.
25. Oh, that doesn't have charge as a
It
weapon.
doesn't have charge. Malfurion's claws do not count as
My
weapons.
thoughts are plagued.
Look at Tom. We saw him do that yesterday when he was in another spot like this, where his nose is open and he's just hoping his opponent doesn't have the right combination to kill him. Because this spot...
Wait. I think
the
Leroy Shadowstep hero power would have been lethal.
And I think that Tom forgot about the that's 3
My
damage.
thoughts are plagued.
Because there's 12 damage on board, the hero power would be 15. The Leroy's fucked.
Wow.
But Surrender taps out. Tom
Counter
takes
pressure.
game 1.
Tom did leave his nose open there to the Leroy Shadowstep. Goodness.
If that last draw was Shadowstep, if that draw off the top for Surrender was Shadowstep, that was game. That would have been a brutal way for Tom to lose. And you could see it get to him. There was a chance for him to play around it. He could have put taunts in the way. He could have done a number of things that turn in order to play around that. But in the end, he takes the win. Now the question is, will Surrender answer back and continue his win streak? We'll find out right after this.
The quest for Hearthstone's greatest prize continues when the Hearthstone World Championship returns.
I think my favorite expansion so far in Hearthstone, at least flavor-wise, who likes Death Knights? Yeah? A huge one with World of Warcraft. Back when I used to play, it was when Wrath of the Lich King just came out. And I loved the Icecrown Citadel stuff and all of that. So I really enjoyed seeing Death Knights added to Hearthstone.
Awesome.
How did you decide how to do that? Because obviously a lot of people would have expected a class.
Yep.
What you did, I think, is better, but how did you get there?
Well, I think Death Knights were the single biggest thing that we did like the most iteration on in the history of, of Hearthstone. We went through so many different iterations on Death Knights, and I think that it's really special. You know, arguably the Lich King is the most famous Warcraft, certainly the most famous villain in Warcraft history, you know, maybe along with Illidan or something like that. But Death Knights in general are just really important. There's people that love Death Knights and the people that want like a new class. And if we weren't going to do a new class, how were we going to do this where, you know, if you really love Death Knights, that this is something that you were happy with? Originally we had, the first mechanic that we had was there was a bunch of different neutral cards and there was class cards that shuffled Death Knight cards into your deck. And Death Knight cards were various different things. And if you played enough Death Knight cards, eventually you yourself turned into a Death Knight, which was the same for all classes. Like if you turned into a Death Knight, it was this crazy powerful character. It had a bunch of abilities. But the problem with that was, you know, of course everyone wants to play to be a Death Knight, of course, right? So all the decks shuffled Death Knight cards in, and then everyone's doing the same thing. And that was one of the biggest problems for that. We also didn't originally have armor on the cards, like you didn't get 5 armor, which might not seem like a big deal, but I think visually, just looking at the cards and the fact that they do something like consistent when you play them helps to set those cards apart from basically everything else. So you have, you know, you have these hero cards and they do a special thing, and they're kind of like spells, but they feel different. They feel like, you know, more powerful, and but just in general, just like the idea of having a battle cry and a permanent effect on the hero power was, we really hoped that that felt different enough from a spell. And I think after a lot of playtesting, it ended up working out. But we went through a ton of different iteration on it. I think we're pretty happy with where it ended up.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Hearthstone World Championship. You're looking at footage from Frozen. He's waiting upstairs to find out who he'll be facing in the grand finals later today. Will it be Surrender, or will it be Tom? And Tom is hoping to find success here that eluded him at the World Championship in 2014 and win a championship for himself and for the Asia Pacific region.
I think the Asia Pacific region was underestimated.
Surrender. Tom60229 advances to the top 8.
But after this tournament, APAC will get some respect.
Tom60229 has sent yet another European player home.
Both Europe and North America have won a world championship. I want this one to be from the Asia Pacific region.
We still have some business left here.
Tom and Sam, both of them being from Taiwan.
It was sad to eliminate my countrymen.
And there you can see the camaraderie and the friendship that's developed over the last year. A lot of respect for each other.
But one of us had to continue to carry the flag, keep going, and try to realize the dreams we both had.
Tom is moving on to the top 4.
If I win, more people in the region will start playing Hearthstone and following the game.
I want to win it all.
I try not to think too much about being the first Asia Pacific player to win a title. It's too much pressure. I just need to focus on the game.
And one thing's for sure, we're guaranteed a player from Asia Pacific in the grand finals.
Down your cards and surrender. Do I have to lay my cards down? What if I just surrender? That's not good enough.
You got to give him up.
Okay, fair enough.
Shout out to the guy holding up that sign as well. Those blue mammoth shirts means that he had some success at those side tournaments, so give him a pat on the back. Unless he stole it, then don't. So congratulations. But now it's time to get back into this match. Tom currently has a 1-0 lead over Surrender. We're moving into Cube Warlock versus Aggro Druid, and this is a tense matchup. We saw this in the first semifinal. with Frozen versus Jason Joe, and Frozen was able to get the better of him, but it took near perfect play in order to do so. There was many moments in that series where if he made a different line than what he did, he would have been dead the following turn. So you have to walk on eggshells in this matchup and make sure you're thinking about everything if you're in Tom's shoes.
Now that same goes for Surrender in this spot as well. I mean, it came down to the end where Jason Joe, if he would have traded off the second Mistress of Mixtures, it wouldn't have been able to attack into Jason Joe's 1-2 and set up a big Defile play. Even that one little moment could have changed the way that looked. Every single thing in this matchup is paramount because the edge is just that close.
That's right. On Surrender's perspective, he has to worry about playing around the various removal spells that Tom packs, the Defiles, the Hellfires. He has to worry about maximizing his damage because 1 point of this damage can mean the difference.
That's a good looking hand from Tom. 2 kobolds to upgrade that Spellstone the full way. After both of those, that'll be a 7-point drain for 4 mana. He's got Defile in hand to help clear the board already. He's got Mortal Coil to pick off weak minions and draw extra cards from that. This is about the ideal hand for Tom in this spot. He's got the tools he needs to fight off Surrender's pressure early.
He still needs to find some of those pieces later on in the game, though. He needs to find something to solidify that victory. Possess Lackey into a Dark Pact or a way to trade it off. Void Lords with Skull of the Minari. But the one thing we talked about in Tom's deck, and this is why Surrender chose to not ban the Warlock despite it being by far the most popular ban choice in this tournament, and that's that Tom is playing the greedier version. He's playing the versions that have Doomguard, which means Possess Lackey plus Dark Pact all of a sudden only has a 50% chance in those cases to pull a Void Lord. And if you pull a Doomguard, oftentimes, while it can fight for the board, it doesn't block enough damage to be able to win you the game.
Yeah, not only does he have the Doomguards in there, but he's also got the Mountain Giants as well. His goal was to be stronger versus Priest when it comes to pressure in the matchup. And all of those cards combined together means that Surrender has a window of opportunity to push the aggression and end the game. It's a very small window of opportunity, and it's not always there, but sometimes it is. And so Surrender, when he sets up right here, he's pretty much strong to anything that Tom can come with on this turn. And that Mark of the Asheraj set up to give him draw into the deck, find a Savage Roar, and try to end that game as soon as possible. And Tom drawing 2 Mountain Giants here is a big hurt for him.
That is not what he wants to see. Those cards are, in a lot of situations, unplayable against fast matchups because you have to tap and draw so many cards early on.
Surrender sets up the Dire Mole here, and that gives Tom the Kobold into Defile. Now there's a 1 health, 2 health, 3 health, and 4 health minion, and they're all gone.
That's a big swing.
But that's a big reload.
Yeah. Maybe that's what Surrender was thinking. Maybe he was also thinking that, well, he plays the first Kobold Librarian, and that's the only card that activates that in the rest of his deck. I can dodge the second one here in order to put power on the board.
Can he afford to Mountain Giant in this spot? He's facing down 11 damage. Savage Roar will kill him outright. Mark of Yasharaj plus any board buff will kill him outright. And even if he lives after he plays the Mountain Giant, what does he do from there?
Yeah, and the thing is, not only does he go, it's a matter of, will he ever have time to stabilize if he takes that much damage? Even if he's not looking at lethal damage, if he takes that much damage, even if Surrender doesn't have Savage Roar, he's probably in a bad spot anyway. So a wise choice by him to get that Spellstone out of the way. But now he needs, what, Hellfire? Exactly. It's 15 points of damage being represented on the board.
He's got nothing defensive in hand. This is the nightmare for Tom, is you draw all of your clunky cards, and you never have an opportunity to wipe out the second wave of pressure.
Mountain Giant mixtures seems like the only play that he can really make. And then he has to hope for a miracle draw, and Surrender is still on Mark of the Lotus as an out to win the game moving into the next turn. He's got 2 copies left in his deck.
That's why I look at this hand and I wonder, how does Tom win if he actually just plays the big boys? He can't. I think that this is possibly a life tap scenario and hope for the best. Oh! Hellfire gets found. But Tom's not out of it yet. So that's all that mana that Surrender's invested now goes back into Surrender's pool. So the second living mana gets to come out in this spot. He gets to add another minion to that if he wants. And then it's wave of pressure number 2. Can Tom handle both of them? Or number 3, rather. Excuse me.
Surrender going to throw out the Dire Bolt here.
Just an extra minion.
Just an extra minion.
No Dark Pact. He's facing 13 points as well.
Does he have to tap again?
That's another nightmare scenario.
Hellfire.
He could also draw Defile in that spot because he has Mortal Coil in his hand to activate it.
6%
for one draw.
For one draw, 6% chance.
He can get the second Defile. So he has 2 outs.
Defile.
And it's 6 and change percent, so it's about 13% to hit a second one here.
Because he could Mortal Coil down one of the minions and then Defile.
Side effects? No.
This keeps him alive for an extra turn, though. Yeah, that's a clever use from Tom. We actually saw Frozen do that exact same thing to try to gain life further down the road. And so Surrender, he looks nervous about this, but he does not have an option. It's forward march.
Yeah, that's just sort of a battle of odds. With 2 draws for Mark of the Lotus, that's an 11% chance to win for Surrender. If Tom taps, he has a 13% chance to draw.
So now he's given himself the extra turn of draw plus a life tap draw after that. But that life tap draw will cut Defile. Defile would not be an out in that situation. So in this spot, he also gets stuff like Dark Pact. Can potentially bring him back into it.
What's in the 4? Prince Taldaram.
I think Tom's gonna tap again. Dark Pact gets drawn, but he doesn't have the mana to possess Lackey and Dark Pact.
Can Dark Pact the cube?
Can he wipe enough damage off board to win in that spot? So he takes 2 off on one of the Treants. That leaves 11 for Surrender plus the hero power at 12. Dark Pact only brings him to 10.
Doesn't look like enough. He needed that Dark Pact off the top, and then he needed to take that 50% chance to get Void Lord instead of Doomguard. And he
wow, Surrender ties it up. All in pressure is the name of the game for his aggro druid deck. And just barely gets there every single turn on the brink of disaster, but he ties the series.
And again, that's a good call from Surrender, leaving that deck up because he knows that it's way more vulnerable to the aggressive decks because of the fact that it's greedier with Mountain Giants, greedier with Doom Guards, and he capitalizes it and ties up the series at 1 apiece. And currently Surrender on a 15-match win streak. In fact, nobody's been on more of a hot streak than Surrender lately. But his 2017 didn't start out that way.
스프링 때까지만 해도
Last spring, I decided to change my approach to the pro Hearthstone scene.
스트리밍으로도
I used to think that I didn't have to play in all the tournaments because I was making money by streaming, and I thought that was good enough.
Is the spring champion for 2017.
스프링 시즌에
Then my good friend Hoy won the spring championship. And I thought, I'm not going to be remembered if I'm just a mediocre player. I decided that I wanted that too, and my attitude changed.
We have a champion. Surrender from South Korea is your Hearthstone Championship Tour summer winner.
작년 썸머 때부터
I have a win streak that's been going on since the summer championship.
Surrender advances to the top 8.
It's definitely increased my focus. I want to see how long I can extend the streak.
We're going to be seeing him semi-finals of the Hearthstone World Championship.
If I don't win now, I will have lots of regrets.
TJ Surrender may never lose again.
It's looking like it this way. He has won 15 HCT matches in a row. The last time he lost was back in round 3 of the summer playoffs, and that just gives you context right there. The next player in line is Pavel with 12. And Surrender's not done. If he wins this, he just continues. If he wins the World Championship, that record's going to hold until we start up again with the 2018 HCT season, which isn't for a few months.
You saw Purple and Muzzy down there as well. All three of those players that he has longer winning streaks than had 10-0 playoff finishes.
Yeah. He went through the playoffs after round 3, then went through the Summer Championship, winning the whole thing. And now, will that continue here? Will Tom put a stop to it? It's tied up 1-1 currently. And we're moving into Warlock versus Rogue.
Surrender, you know, I've seen a lot of facial expressions from Surrender over the course of these last few tournaments. I don't recall him quite talking to himself during that point, though. I mean, these guys are playing not only for that world title, but there is a ton of money at stake. And that is the worst draw in Surrender's deck. That's gonna put a big hurt on his aggressive potential.
I mean, imagine what goes through players' heads when they're on this big of a stage in the semifinals tied up and they draw just about the worst card in their deck. You just have to sort of forget about that and make the best use of what you have. That's the risk you take by playing patches, is sometimes you're going to draw it. And it seems like we've seen it happen a lot over the course of the World Championship.
You know, these are very crucial matches, and it's something that I look at when I think about that scenario is actually Frozen's lineup. He didn't bring Corridor Creeper. He can't draw patches if it's not in any of his decks. He's playing solid builds that target the metagame. Almost every other player in the tournament settled on one of the more standard-looking lineups. At this point, this is the absolute worst time it could happen, but it happens.
It happens. And as we take a look at how these hands look, Tom, Spirit Singer Umbra is another card that we haven't really got to touch on very much because it's not in a lot of the lists. And Spirit Singer Umbra in Carnivorous Cube can make for some pretty big swings in a game. And a lot of times Spirit Singer Umbra, if you just play it on turn 4, it's like a must-kill threat.
That's really, to me, the big benefit of that card, is it's a form of disruption. It offers you so much value if it's left up that your opponent often doesn't have the ability to just leave it unchecked. They have to put something into it. But if you're going to draw patches, I would guess that this is also a pretty decent one to pick up alongside with it. Prince Keliseth is pretty darn important to this matchup.
Yeah. But again, we talked about it earlier. Even just turn 3, if Keliseth's not played on curve, the win rate plummets.
Yeah. But
for all the decks that run it, and a large part of that is because of the synergy that it does have with patches.
Yeah. One of my questions to that, though, is Surrender fighting the early aggressive push in this matchup? His minions are going to fight directly against the Kobold Librarian. It's going to fight directly against Mistress of Mixtures, against Hellfires and Defiles. Is it the timing of that pressure that's more important for Surrender, or is it the early outright aggression? The early outright aggression certainly matters, but I think it's the timing of pressure that matters more.
Yeah, I mean, they're both paths to win the game at the end of the day. And you're happy to see it drawn on turn 3 than drawn on turn 15.
Right.
But still, now the big thing here for Surrender is pacing out these threats. Yeah, playing Prince Keliseth on 2 is great, but what are you doing after that? It just gets challenged. He needs to put something on the board. Surrender realizes this and goes with a pretty small Edwin, but an Edwin that's not being challenged at that. And
this does hurt Tom's ability to just coin out that Spirit Singer Umbra if that was ever on his mind, though.
Yeah.
So he's looking like Surrender is actually going to get quite rewarded for this play. And I like this, too. Again, the early aggression matters, but it depends on what form of it. Stacking up minions that are large works better against these Control Warlock decks because they have so many tools to pick apart small boards.
And now Tom trying to think through this one. He can tap play Mistress of Mixtures that still lines him up for a Mountain Giant play on next turn.
Play the Kobold, maybe try to look for another option.
Look for additional removal, but Kobold is also a great tool in coupling with the Defiler. Well, I mean, right now it just sort of gets eaten up.
Well, this is, I think, a brilliant play from Tom, and the reason why isn't because I think the Mistress gets eaten up. It's because knowing that Surrender has that 4/4 on board means it's very difficult for him to play a 3 health minion right now. Tom could play the Kobold and the Mistress of Mixtures and then rip the Defile with it. He's saving both of those tools to start that chain of Defiles.
It's a great spot, great point.
This is exactly what Tom did in game number 1 with the Arcane Tyrant as well. He hid it behind the taunts rather than playing it for free immediately. And that timing and that pressure, I think, gave him a big lead in that game.
That is going to set it up.
Truth is found.
Surrender now, though, likely to play, seems like Patches plus Minstrel next turn, so this is the time we want to get Kelseth rolling when you're about to start generating those resources.
His attack on the previous turn with the dagger actually alluded to this play as well. Oftentimes you'll see Surrender save his dagger in that spot just to try to get more value, and Tom holding on to that Mistress of Mixtures, that is exactly the direction he's headed with that Kobold, that Mistress, and that Defile in hand. And it's very difficult for Surrender to anticipate a 3-card combination when Tom has had 2 opportunities to play one of those.
He's basically using it as 3 cards, draw a card, gain 2, and clear your opponent's board. That's the combination that he's got his eye on. But the thing is, Tom doesn't have a way to stifle pressure beyond that. Currently, he's picked up more Mountain Giants, which will naturally get there. But no cheating demons out with Skull Dominaria or Possessed Lackey, and that's where the big strength of this deck lies.
Yeah, something really big to look at here is that Mountain Giant's often a card Surrender's not at all worried about. But because he didn't have that early pressure, it gave Tom time to simply build his hand size and make those a lot cheaper. And Cairn in Surrender's list is a card that can be quite difficult for Tom to fend off in terms of pressure. It just gives him something that will stick to the board.
Yeah. It's a card that fell out of favor because, largely because of Corridor Creeper. A 6-mana 4/5 was directly challenged by sometimes a 0-mana 5/5, which sort of pushed it out. But Surrender opted to go for it, and it is better in this type of matchup because the Warlock doesn't have great removal to deal with Cairn. And of course, Tom doesn't have a Spellbreaker in his deck, so he doesn't have a way to sort of immediately get rid of it.
Well, Tom's hand is starting to shape up pretty nicely, but he is under a lot of pressure. So now the thing he's got to worry about is Leroy Jenkins from Surrender. He knows what cards are in the deck, so he doesn't have to worry about Cold Blood shenanigans. But at 16 life, if he just starts trading this Mountain Giant onto the board, that pressure is going to continue to mount on Surrender's side. At some point, Tom is going to have to swing the board.
Yeah. Leroy Jenkins currently 7 attack because of the Prince Kelseth. And again, we talk about Tom's list and sort of the risks that he took with building his lineup. And of course, with the Doomguard package and Mountain Giants, you leave less room for removal.
That's right.
No Twisting Nether in Tom's list. He's got the 2 copies of the Defile, the 2 copies of Hellfire, and the Amethyst Spellstones. That's about it. That's his removal package. He relies on the combos that piece this deck together to get through these parts of the game.
So the other benefit to hanging on that Mistress of Mixtures, you get the time. Mistress represents 8 points of life gain rather than just 4, and some of it's immediate. Well, that's an interesting draw. He can combo that this turn alongside 2 Corridor Creepers as well.
That seems like a pretty powerful play to me.
So there's the first trade. There's the second. Tom's getting more life total, but now this is that timing of pressure that Surrender was looking for.
And because of the buffs on the minions, Tom's clear is going to be tougher.
This is looking really tough for Tom at this stage.
He still can do it. Hellfire, Kobold Librarian, Coin, Defile.
Oh, because that sets the first Corridor Creeper to 2.
That's right.
Wow.
So it is a clear, but it's a lot of resources.
Look at how important that Kelseth buff 1 turn earlier could have been for Surrender. Now, say that Corridor Creeper was drawn at some point with a Kelseth buff. That board doesn't happen, I don't believe. Oh, it does with the Bile Spine. Never mind. I'm an idiot. It's looking like Cairn time. Notice, though, that Tom is approaching that 9-mana spot where Void Lord hits. If Surrender sees a Void Lord hit at this stage, he is going to be in big trouble.
Yeah, a lot of times as Rogue, you're looking to kill the Warlock on turn 8 and dodge all these demons, but Cairn out of 5/6 is quite a big deal. But as soon as that first Void Lord drops, especially with only 1 Vile Spine Slayer left for Surrender, you pretty much need to get through it immediately, because as soon as you don't, you open up your opponent to be able to cube it, you open up your opponent to be able to trade, and make use of these combos that they have in their deck.
And they're going to attack. Possessed Lackey gets drawn for Tom.
Still the 2 Doom Guards left in his deck, though. He's got 1 Void Lord, 2 Doom Guards, so if he goes for Possessed Lackey plus Dark Pact, it's actually more likely that he draws a Doom Guard instead, and outside of that, he doesn't have a way to guarantee that Doom Guard lives the following turn to be able to cube it.
Is there a chance that he just plays Possessed Lackey?
Is there a chance that he just plays Mountain Giant?
The Possessed Lackey could, if it stays on the board for a turn, he doesn't die, then he's got the cube for that chance at it. It would be the Dark Pact immediately, I have to think. This is a tough spot for Tom. All of his plays are risks at this point. No matter what he does, he will be vulnerable to something without a favorable outcome.
Yeah, and the life path. And just plays the Possessed Lackey onto the board.
That's a 7-point Leroy right now. So 7 plus the 5 on board, plus 2 from that. Is Surrender 1 damage off lethal?
1 damage off lethal. If he had a dagger equipped, he would end the game right now. And now the big question is, do you deal that damage? With the dagger hit in Leroy, he puts Tom at 2 with SI7H in hand. This Possessed Lackey on board, Surrender does not have insight into what's in Tom's hand.
I can't believe, I can't imagine here that Surrender thinks that Tom has a Dark Pact in hand already. Tom chose to life tap and play Possessed Lackey, taking a risk on his life total where he could just outright die before that.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't Tom have Dark Pacted this Possessed Lackey immediately, I think is what Surrender's thinking right now.
Because he puts him at 2, he's got the combo activator. Tom would need healing. Even Possessed Lackey wouldn't be able to fight back on the board long enough. No, he's just going to build up a bigger board.
And I think this is quite wise as well, actually. With this particular play, Surrender now has an opportunity to even bust through Void Lord with the Vile Spine Slayer. So he would push through Void Lord and then pressure Tom on the swing after that. So this one's important.
Void Lord gets the Void Lord.
And here's the thing, that Leroy in hand now is not getting through for a long time because Tom has an insane amount of combination of the cards here. The Prince Tal'Daram to copy the Void Lord, get an extra death rattle there. The Carnivorous Cube, get the Void Walkers right away, and then use the Dark Pact to heal up and make 2 more Void Lords. I think Tom might have stabilized this turn.
He can't do it all this turn, though. And the question is, which one does he go with? He could Carnivorous Cube the Void Lord and Dark Pact the Carnivorous Cube to make double Void Lords, but he doesn't get immediate value out of the first Void Lord. But this is going to be the way that he stifles the most pressure.
Where does Surrender just break through in this spot? Like, this is just a lot of attacking he's going to have to do. And, mind you, there is a Void Lord underneath that Carnivorous Cube.
He can actually even eat the Carnivorous Cube.
With a Carnivorous Cube.
With a Carnivorous Cube.
Now, I don't think he's going to do that, but I don't know where Surrender breaks through again. This is going to be a giant wall of defense that Tom sets turn after turn.
I don't know, Admirable. 4 Void Lords seems pretty good to me.
It's about as good as it gets. It's hard to beat 1 Void Lord.
That's why a lot of players opted to not bring the Doomguard package in the Greedier Warlock deck to this tournament, is because against most decks, the Void Lords just get there. You don't need the Doomguards to end the game. And this combat gets really complex.
Yeah, your question might be why isn't Surrender trading off one of these minions, but I imagine that Defile is somewhere on his mind. How does that math change when he has a natural 2 health minion? Tom's not thinking about that. Tom's thinking about how he's about to get 2 more Void Lords.
Yep. Yep.
Up to 15.
And a giant board for Tom.
How on earth does Surrender break through?
He's still got a lot of power on board.
Swashbuckler Defile, maybe? I'm sorry, Swashbuckler Twisting Nether. Something insane is going to have to happen for Surrender to win this game, and he's not even going to play that one out. 2-1 lead for Tom. He is on match point.
Now the pressure's on. Surrender one game away from his hopes at a world champion title will end. But Tom now, he's just one game away, and it comes down to Rogue.
Whew. I'm glad I'm not Surrender spot.
I am glad I'm not in either of those spots, but we had so many people show up to the World Championship today. We opened another room. You're looking at the theater, which is broadcasting the matches to all the folks that came by and couldn't even make it in the main room. It's an insane atmosphere.
It really is. I mean, the energy in the crowd has been insane. Frozen waiting for the winner of Surrender versus Tom. That match is coming up next. He's already through to the grand finals. And that smile, you can tell he's enjoying himself. But I'll tell you who might be feeling it a little bit more than a smile right now.
Yeah.
It's that guy.
There's a little smile.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta be happy, but Tom has just been so calm this match. Aside from the one moment where he felt maybe he had made that mistake in game number 1, Tom has looked super focused.
We've seen players be up in series and then not be able to get it done with Tempo Rogue. We've seen it time and time again.
Think to the Doc Pone match versus Jason Joe.
That's right.
Doc Pone was on match point, 2-0, 3 losses with Tempo Rogue right in a row.
And you know who has a similar lineup to Jason Joe? It's Surrender. So that's the lineup that can beat Tempo Rogue. And right off the bat, Surrender, even just this mulligan. Great options to start. Kazakis, Shadow Reaper, Anduin. The piece he's missing is Raza.
It's a pretty darn good opening hand for Surrender, I'll say that. I do want to talk about Tom's Tempo Rogue list for a little bit here, though. He's included 1 copy of Elven Minstrel, which is traditionally pretty good in this matchup. But he has 2 copies of Cobalt Scalebane. That's a card that's included in this deck to pressure through Dragonfire Potion. 5 damage to the whole board, wipes everything away, but not to dragons. Cobalt Scalebane is the one card I think that can really pressure through that. And Tom's opening hand, oh my.
That is gas.
That is a huge opening hand for Tom. Surrender, the shake of the head. That is not the start he wanted to see.
When you put 2 titans of players and of decks in this instance, and of cards, with Kazakis, Shadow Reaper, Anduin versus Keleseth, Shadowstep, Keleseth.
Buckle in.
Buckle in.
Oh my. That I think that's the best draw in Tom's deck right now.
Yep.
This captain might be a little bit better.
I don't know. I like pushing 4 extra damage.
The look on Surrender's face.
But Tom, he's not autopiloting this. He's probably been in this situation maybe hundreds of times.
Think back to Ant in his rounds during the World Championships. He opened up with Keleseth, Shadowstep, Keleseth, Shadowstep, Keleseth, and didn't win that game.
He did not. And he said he felt like he could have played it better. He felt like he was, kind of on autopilot and, trying to ride the momentum of the good early draw in order to win the game. But he didn't. So Tom making sure that he's just doing everything correctly. The patches trade into the Acolyte of Pain is the obvious one, but he thinks about everything.
Is someone injured?
Maybe this trade is weaker to Blood Mage Spirit Lash. Who knows?
Look at how desperate Surrender is. Healing opposing patches to draw a card. He needs to find something to answer this board.
This guy's toast.
Tom, you want to waste time drawing cards, go ahead. Damage incoming.
12 damage on board, 13 with the dagger hit. Any point of damage.
Galaka Crawler? Is there any hope here now?
Yeah, but the thing about the Galaka Crawler is, if he does that, what else does he do? He delays Kazakis.
Play a Wild Pyromancer?
Yeah, Galaka Crawler, healer, player, Wild Pyromancer.
Anything to try to fight for board right now. I mean, he's got Psychic Scream in hand. I think there is a chance he can get back into this, but it's going to require It's going to require some picture-perfect draws.
That's a start.
You know, he can Kazakus for the 1-cost potion next turn as well. And Tom draws a second Bone Mare to go with it. So the pressure really alleviates here for Surrender. And this is exactly what he needed. He needed Tom to stumble for 1 turn to try to get back in.
I mean, his next few turns are laid out. Next turn, he can go Kazakus for a 1-mana potion. 6 is going to be the weak point.
So many.
That's going to be the turn where Tom is going to need to take advantage of something. But then he's got Psychic Scream on 7 into Anduin on 8.
That's the solution Tom comes up with. Play a big 7/7. Can you deal with that?
And a 1-mana potion, unless it's perfect, is not going to be enough to deal with the majority of this board. He needs deal 2 damage to all and deal 3 damage.
At last.
He could get deal 2 damage to all and freeze a minion. He does get freeze a minion, but is that better than gain 4 armor?
If you need the perfect potion, it just might. Surrender. Look at him in the tank right now.
Yeah.
How do I win this game?
If he picks freeze and then gets deal 2 damage to all, he can kill everything and then freeze the Corridor Creeper.
No 2 damage.
Oh, those are not good. Not good. Quickly. Just draw a card?
I don't know. I really don't.
I think they make a 2/2 probably has to be the best option to soften up the board for Dragonfire.
The healing's gone from Surrender's deck as well. He uses Binding Heal. He's got to hope he freezes that Corridor Creeper, and he freezes it. Surrender at 14, facing 9 points, or 6 points of pressure. Cobalt Scalebane gets drawn for Tom.
Just when you think Surrender is out of the woods, at least for 1 more turn, it's a 7/7. Not only does it not get hit by Dragonfire Potion, but it doesn't get hit by about anything except
Shadow Word Death. Does Surrender have that 1 more turn, though? Tom's got Bone Mare coming next turn. Surrender has to survive with as much life as possible. I'm looking at Wild Pyromancer with a Silence and a Shadow Word Death. He can isolate Tom's board to just 5 damage, but it will require a lot of resources.
But then the question is, if Bone Mare comes out next turn, he goes to 1. He Psychic Screams, he's dead to a dagger hit.
No, he can Silence to put the damage down to 9 total. He can peel 2 more off with that Silence.
That's the only way. Wild Pyromancer Silence on the Corridor Creeper.
So you want the Wild Pyromancer there, I think. So Shadow Word Death, Wild Pyromancer Silence.
That's right.
Or Silence, Wild Pyromancer Shadow Word Death. Either of those combinations puts him in range to live for a turn if Tom doesn't draw damage.
And this also puts an extra minion on the board to be able to contest the following turn.
Swashbuckler. Bone Mare will drop Surrender down to just 3 health remaining.
It is such an uphill battle for Surrender. Bomb after bomb being played at 3 health. He picks up the Raza. So that's going to be great post Anduin, but he's got a lot to worry about until then. He can actually get away with using the Dragonfire Potion this turn if he feels like that's not going to get any better.
That's exactly what he's going to do. That gives him an extra couple points of health to work with, and it gives him the security of Psychic Scream needing to wipe the board in case Tom's got another Cobalt Scalebane, or just tons of pressure.
He's also been on a Leroy draw for the last couple turns to just end the game. And this is playing into Shadow Reaper Anduin. Oh, I thought he was going with the Bone Mare. Do you take the value from the Shadow Reaper Anduin now, or do you wait for a better position? We've seen players get punished so many times this tournament for delaying Shadow Reaper Anduin because they think they're going to find a better spot.
He's going to go for it now.
He's got to do it.
This is so tough for Surrender.
And again,
Tom is the second Bone Mare in hand, and now Surrender does not have a further way to heal remaining in the deck outside of Priest of the Feast. So here's the push. Surrender drops to 2 points of life.
South Sea Deckhand. SI7 agent. Leroy Jenkins.
A couple of a minstrel that could draw those cards.
A minstrel that can draw those cards. All of those things are outs for Tom going to the next turn. He's got one SI7 agent, one South Sea Deckhand, so
shadowy thoughts.
If he draws one card, that's a
Look at Tom
12% chance. Yeah, he's
looking over at Surrender occasionally. He knows he's right on the verge of winning. Surrender has been in this position so many times this weekend, where it looks like he's on the brink of disaster. He somehow manages to find a way out.
And Psychic Scream has to be on the menu here, but the question is, does he play the Novice Engineer first and Psychic Scream that back into Tom's deck?
The shadows
Does he play the Blood Mage after to try to get a second card draw?
Yeah.
With Novice Engineer next turn. Tom finds the damage, and he's gonna move on to the grand finals, eliminating Surrender 3-1.
Ending his match streak at 15 and cementing himself as the king of Asia Pacific.
What a series between these two. It was heavy hitting hands back and forth, but at the end of the day, the overwhelming pressure from Tom and the double Keliseth opener was just too much for Surrender to fight against.
And now the grand finals are set. It's going to be Frozen from the Americas versus tom60229 from Taiwan. But for now, let's head on stage with Frodan.
Tom, that was a pretty intense series. Tell me about how you're feeling right now going into the series and now that you've won.
刚才是非常激烈的一场比赛，然后跟我们大家说一下你现在感受如何？
因为过去每一年冠军都有贼，所以我相信我会赢 Frozen。
So every world champions that come before us has a row in their lineup, so I think I would win.
Well, it's definitely a good precedent. Having Rogue is really important, I guess, just historically. You said that in 2014 you weren't really happy with your play when you came to the World Championship. And you've been commenting about how you've been playing in every series before this. How do you feel like your play is today so far?
你之前也在那个采访中也提到，2014年的世锦赛的时候打得不是很满意，然后也在对那个之前的一些比赛做过很多自我的检讨，然后对目前来说打的自己的表现觉得如何呢？
我觉得我今天状况没有很好，像是德鲁伊打贼那一场，最后应该要防炸鸡暗闪，所以我觉得我可以再打得更好一点。
I don't think I played particularly that well. I think in a matchup when I played Druid, I should be aware of that my opponent might have Leroy Jenkins, but I didn't really kind of be caught off guard on that. So I should be played better.
All right, always looking to improve. My next question is, how do you feel going up against Frozen in the grand finals? People are talking about his lineup and saying that he is going to be the hardest opponent for any lineup to beat.
在那个总决赛那个最后一场比赛会对阵到 Frozen， 然后很多人都说 Frozen 的他的带的卡组是可能说是16个选手里面最难打的。然后你对对上他有什么想法呢？
他带的 line-up 的确比较好，但我觉得技术上我会赢过他。
He definitely has a really good lineup, but in terms of skill plays, I don't think it's I'm a lesser opponent than he is.
All right, it's going to be a great match. Please give a round of applause for tom60229 from Taiwan. He is going to the grand finals, and to prepare for the grand finals, we're going to send it over to Raven Sottle at the desk.
Thanks a lot, Dan.